Can you imagine if someone decades ago had accurately predicted the challenges you face today? Not just the external crises, but those silent inner battles. Anxiety, the feeling of emptiness, the search for meaning in an increasingly fast-paced and seemingly directionless world. What if that person wasn't just any visionary, but a man whose work delved into the depths of the human psyche, exploring both its darkest and brightest corners? Carl Jung. Yes, him. The Swiss doctor who dared to look into the shadow side of the soul and found not only danger, but also wisdom. Now imagine he left prophecies, not apocalyptic or supernatural ones, but psychological predictions so profound they resonate perfectly with what we're experiencing today. Prophecies about how humanity would lose touch with itself, how technology would isolate us even as it connects us, how we'd seek meaning in superficial things and drown in distractions while our soul cries out for something deeper. These are Jung's prophecies, and they're unfolding before our eyes. But here's the most surprising truth. He also gave us the tools to awaken, to reclaim our center, to find our way back to our own essence. So why are so many still lost? Perhaps because few are willing to truly listen to what he said. The real journey isn't out there. It begins within us. What if I told you that the answer to all the questions you carry might be hidden in the oldest mirror there is, the collective unconscious? Jung spoke of it as an ancestral repository of symbols, stories, and archetypes, a shared memory of all human beings, transcending cultures and eras. It's as if, by looking inward, we're also looking at millennia of accumulated wisdom stored in the deepest structure of the human mind. And in this invisible realm, he believed, lie the roots of our choices, our fears, our most secret dreams, and even our madness. That's why when we feel lost, confused, or empty, we might not just be searching for direction. We're seeking reconnection with this primordial field that shapes us. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe your sleepless nights, your unexplained exhaustion, your constant restlessness aren't signs of something wrong, but invitations to go deeper? Jung would say yes. He saw neurosis not as a flaw, but as an urgent message from the soul demanding attention. And perhaps that's what so many of us are ignoring. The call to come home, to ourselves. A call that, ironically, many try to drown out with more consumption, more distraction, more information, when what we really need is silence, introspection, and the courage to face what we'd rather not see. Is that what's happening? Are we in a time when the human soul is crying out for help and the only way to hear it is to stop running? If you're here watching this video, maybe it's because somehow you already sense this. Maybe you've reached a point where rational explanations start to feel empty, where ready-made answers no longer suffice. And perhaps, like so many, before you're searching for something that has no name, but lives deep in your heart. Jung would call this individuation, the process by which a person becomes whole, integrating their conscious and unconscious parts. A journey that's neither easy nor linear, but absolutely necessary. Because, as he said, we are not only what we know of ourselves, we are also what we don't yet understand, what still needs to emerge. And perhaps it's exactly at the threshold between the known and the unknown that true transformation happens. How many times have you caught yourself repeating patterns you didn't want, acting in ways you didn't understand, hurting people you love without knowing why? Jung would say this isn't malice or weakness, it's simply the unintegrated shadow. That part of us we reject, deny, but which continues to influence our actions unconsciously. It's as if we have a hidden side that, if not acknowledged, ends up controlling us. And perhaps this is Jung's greatest prophecy, that in a world increasingly focused on image, performance, and external approval, we'd grow distant from our own shadow, and in doing so, lose touch with our authenticity. Can you feel it? Like there's a growing chasm between who you seem to be and who you really are. Know that this feeling isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign that something in you is ready to awaken. Have you ever wondered why so many myths, legends, and ancient stories feel so familiar, even when they come from entirely different cultures? Why does the archetype of the hero appear in the Epic of Gilgamesh as much as in the journeys of Horus, Rama, or Odin? Jung saw this as more than coincidence. He believed these stories weren't just random tales, but symbolic manifestations of the deep structure of the human mind. And perhaps this is what we're forgetting, that we live within a larger narrative, one that precedes and surpasses us, a narrative in which each of us is both protagonist and witness. What's happening to humanity today can be read as an unconscious repetition of these ancient myths, the fall from paradise, the loss of center, the search for redemption. But unlike the heroes of the past, many of us don't even realize we're in a myth. We're immersed in it, unaware that we're writing our own epic. And while we try to find answers in science, technology, politics, or entertainment, perhaps the true path lies elsewhere, in listening to the silent voices within us. It's as if we're stumbling blindly, guided by impulses we don't understand, reacting to forces we don't even recognize. Jung would call this a psychic projection, the tendency to project outward what we need to confront within. So maybe the great crisis today isn't economic, environmental, or social, but a crisis of consciousness, a failure to see that the problem isn't out there, it's here, in me, in you, in all of us. What if I told you that the answer to this crisis was written long ago, but few are willing to read it? Jung warned of the dangers of a civilization that loses touch with its spiritual roots. He saw the modern world as a place where rationality dominated to the point of suffocating mystery, where efficiency replaced meaning, where information supplanted wisdom. And in this process we lost something fundamental, our connection to the sacred. Not necessarily religion, but that which makes us feel alive, authentic, connected to something greater. Have you ever felt it? That sense that everything seems functional but lacks soul, that things work well but don't seem to matter. It's as if we're in a hyper-connected world, yet profoundly lonely. A world where everything is possible, but nothing seems to have meaning. And perhaps this is exactly what Jung predicted, that we'd reach a time when the pursuit of progress would distance us from our own humanity. That we'd be surrounded by knowledge, yet starved for understanding. That we'd accumulate data but lose the ability to dream, because it's in dreams, in images, in symbols, that we find the clues to our awakening. And when we stop dreaming, when we stop listening to the metaphors of the unconscious, we fall into a state of psychological sleep, physically awake, but spiritually asleep. How many of us are like this? How many of us are living a life that seems real, but doesn't feel true? Perhaps it's time to wake up, not dramatically, but with a small act of courage, looking inward, facing what we've avoided, recognizing that the shadow isn't an enemy. It's part of us, and only by integrating it can we feel whole again. So, why do so many resist this encounter with themselves? Why do so many prefer to keep running, searching outside for what can only be found within? Perhaps because facing our shadow is a rare act of courage. It's easy to judge others, blame the world, complain about fate. It's much harder to recognize that on some level, each of us contributes to what we criticize. Jung knew this. He understood that true transformation doesn't come from external revolutions, but from an internal change so profound it feels almost frightening. And perhaps this is his greatest psychological prophecy, that many of the ills we see today aren't caused by external forces, but by a collective refusal to face inner truths. When we project our shadow onto others, we create enemies where there should be understanding. When we deny our weaknesses, we become vulnerable to them, and when we pretend to be perfect, we lose touch with our own humanity. Can you feel it? The pressure to seem whole while inside everything feels fragmented? Know that this feeling isn't unique to you. It's part of the human condition, but it's also the first step towards something greater, because only those who acknowledge their flaws can truly evolve. Only those who accept their shadow can become lighter, and only those who look inward can finally find the way home. What if I told you that this path already exists within you, and all you need to do is remember it? Jung saw individuation as a circular journey, where we return to the beginning not as a step back to square one, but as a return to the same place with new eyes. It's as if deep down, we already know everything we need to know, but we've forgotten. And perhaps all this searching, all these questions, all these moments of crisis and doubt are just the universe gently nudging us, reminding us that there's more. More life, more meaning, more connection, more authenticity. How many times have you felt it? That quiet intuition telling you there's something beyond what your eyes can see, that there's a greater purpose, even if it's not yet clear. That your heart beats for something, even if you don't know exactly what. That feeling isn't random, it's a call to awaken, to integrate, to heal. And perhaps this is Jung's greatest prophecy, that in a time when the human soul would be forgotten, a few would dare to listen to it again. A few would decide to stop running. A few would have the courage to dive into their depths and emerge renewed. And maybe you're here watching this video because you're one of those few. Maybe you've reached the point where you can no longer ignore the call. And maybe in this moment you're already starting to hear. So what would you do if you knew the answer to all your questions was already within you, and all it takes is the courage to listen? Jung didn't speak of miraculous cures or magic formulas. He spoke of a slow, painful, transformative process, a path where every step demands honesty, humility, and a willingness to face the unknown. It's as if we're all walking through a dense forest full of shadows, mysteries, and creatures we don't even know inhabit it. And many prefer to shine bright lanterns to light only the ground ahead, not realizing that the true journey begins when we accept that we can't see everything, and that perhaps it's in the darkness that we'll find our own light. Have you ever felt it? That sense that you're close to something important but you can't quite define it. Maybe it's because your heart already knows, your soul is already guiding you. All you need to do is follow, not with haste, not with fear, but with faith. Faith that even in the apparent chaos of the world, there's a deeper order, a hidden harmony, a pattern that connects everything and everyone. And perhaps this is the greatest revelation, that by looking inward, you're not just discovering yourself, you're rediscovering the universe. What if I told you that this universe, which lives within you, holds answers that go far beyond time and space? That the same archetypes that inspired ancient myths are still alive today, manifesting in your dreams, your desires, your deepest fears. Jung saw this as proof that the human psyche is not just individual, but also collective, an invisible network that connects us to each other and to the whole. It's as if each of us is a note in a cosmic symphony, unique in its expression, but essential to the overall harmony. And perhaps this is why so many of us feel lost, because we're trying to live out of tune, pretending to be a song that isn't ours. But when we reconnect with our inner truth, when we let go of the masks and face who we really are, we begin to vibrate at the right frequency. And in that moment, everything changes. Relationships become more authentic. Choices become clearer. Meaning emerges naturally, as if it was always there waiting for you. How many times have you had a profound insight during a moment of silence? How many times has an answer come when you stopped searching so desperately? Know that this isn't coincidence. It's the universe speaking to itself through you. And perhaps this is Jung's greatest prophecy, that in a time when humanity would be on the brink of forgetting itself, a few would dare to hear the voice of the soul again. A few would have the courage to dive into the depths and return with light. And maybe, just maybe, you're here today because you're one of those few. If you've made it this far, watching this video to the end, perhaps you've already realized it wasn't by chance. Maybe every word you've heard has struck a chord. Within you awakened something dormant, made you feel there's more. More life, more purpose, more connection. And maybe now you're wondering, what do I do with all this? How do you apply these ideas in practice? How do you start walking this path without losing your way? The answer, paradoxically, is simple. Start with yourself. Start with silence, with inner listening, with the courage to look at what you'd rather ignore. Because true growth doesn't come from external techniques or methods. It comes from an honest encounter with your own shadow, from a daily commitment to authenticity, from small acts of courage repeated with consistency. The most important thing isn't what you learn here, it's what you do with it. Because true knowledge is only complete when it becomes action, when it transforms into life, when it manifests in the way you breathe, love, create, and choose to exist. So, are you ready? Ready to hear the voice of your soul, ready to come home?